Morning.
Good. This morning we have another panel. It's going to be very exciting. We're actually going to have the conversation today from nicety to necessity, the datafication of modern industries. This will be a very exciting topic. We want to make sure that our takeaway is in line with our theme, big data and predictive analytics, forged by the power of AI. These topics will be pretty much threaded throughout our entire conference, as you can see. And as we alluded to yesterday, data has transitioned from an enhancement to the backbone of innovation. Our panel discussion explores how diverse industries harness the power of datafication to drive strategic decision-making and transformative outcomes. Whether you are looking to understand the practical implications of datafication or seeking to leverage these insights to better understand how to position yourself for the job of tomorrow, this session will provide valuable perspectives on making data a necessity so that you can stay competitive in today's fast-paced market. So, ladies and gentlemen, this morning, your moderator will be Ms. Lakeisha Doobie. And without further ado, Lakeisha.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So I'm Lakeisha Doobie. I'm with Cardinal Health as a software engineering director supporting our inventory and transportation technologies within the pharma segment. I also represent the BDPA Columbus chapter as VP of Membership Management. And today, Cardinal has graciously sponsored the plenary session, and so we'll highlight exactly who Cardinal is. I see a few rivals out in the audience, and I'm sure J&J or Eli Lilly can tell you exactly who we are. But I'll start the video and let you see why Cardinal Health is essential to care.
Healthcare is personal and more interconnected than ever before. We are the link, the connection across the continuum of care. We know that when healthcare works seamlessly, patients have the best outcomes. Over the last half-century, where change has been the only constant, we have remained resilient and agile, and our focus remains clear. Unlock a healthier future for all, and move healthcare forward. From the lab to the hospital, ensuring vital products are available to patients across the world. From the pharmacy to the home, developing breakthrough technologies that advance personalized healthcare and precision medicine. Creating customized solutions for healthcare facilities that allow them to focus on what's most important, patients. We are evolving. We are innovating. Because patients count on our customers, and our customers count on us. We are driving inefficiencies out of the healthcare system to unlock value and improve patient outcomes. We are driven to create the solutions to address healthcare's most complicated challenges and be healthcare's most trusted partner. We are Cardinal Health.
So today we have 5 brilliant panelists I'm excited to have in our discussion. And so I'll take a moment to allow them to introduce themselves before we get into some questions and answers and get started. Starting with Dr. Majid.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Dr. Jesse Majid. I work at the United States Department of State with the Bureau of Diplomatic Technology. Glad to be here. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Angie Adeyemo, and I'm a mentor with Girls Who Code, and I work as a data analyst at AT&T, and I'm very happy to be here.
Good morning everyone, my name is Amy Russ. I'm currently the Vice President of Customer Analytics at Synchrony Financial.
I'm Dr. Melvin Greer. I'm a fellow and chief data scientist at Intel, and I'm responsible for Intel's global AI strategy and deployment.
I'm Gary Dixon, been at Cardinal Health for 16 years. I'm the IT Director of Product and Technology. My area is called Pharmacy Practice Enablement.
So as Perry mentioned, today today we'll be looking at from nicety to necessity, really focusing on the datafication of modern industries. There are many aspects of datafication. I believe datafication is rooted in the concept of utilizing data to represent social life. Datafication applied to both social and communication media as it affects me personally include, but is not limited to, Twitter, TikTok, and even LinkedIn. I'm sure you all can relate. Daily, I share messages with my friends and family, whether it's a funny meme or some type of inspirational message. And I often get told, Lakeisha, please stop. Why do you think that is? It's because I'm messing up their algorithm when they go into whatever that social medium is, right? And so we'll pause for a moment, not to deflect too much or deter too much. Anytime I see something that's Samsung versus iPhone, I am quick to share it because I am Team Samsung. Not the iPhone, a little example here. However, the reason I'm quick to share it, one, I know it's messing up their algorithms, right? And every time they pick up their phones, they go, whether it's to Google or a search engine or on social media, something will pop up showing, oh, here's the features of Samsung, right? So when you take a moment and you think about that, it's really looking at the data that's being collected behind the scenes, the algorithms, right? What type of information you're wanting to see, what type of information you've looked up. It's gathering and collecting all those bits of information. So today, we'll go from browsing social media to how transforming organizations and datafication allows for real-time tracking and analytics. So this is what we'll talk about with our panelists today, and we'll start with a couple of rounds of questions, and then we'll get into Q&A at the end of the discussion. Sounds fair?
Fair.
So we'll start with our first question in terms of the theme for nicety to necessity. Give an example of how you have seen data and technology grow from being a nicety into an existing or future business necessity. I'll start with either Dr. Greer or Dr. Magid if you want to take that.
Sure, thank you very much. Data is actually the fuel that's driving many, many industries. And in fact, without data, we wouldn't have law enforcement, we wouldn't be able to do national security or be able to support national defense. Clearly, Cardinal Health is a great company, and we are seeing that one example where data has moved from a nicety to a necessity is in the electronic health record. We would not be able to have meaningful health care if we didn't have data that was fungible and easy to transform and share. Data, of course, from an AI perspective, is the fuel that drives every one of these data analytics and data AI capabilities. And so without it, we wouldn't be able to do any of the analysis or any of the great activities we have in insight development. So data is now not just a nicety, it is absolutely a necessity.
Thank you. Dr. Magid, did you want to add anything to that?
Yes. One thing that comes to mind is my time in high school. There is this, sorry about that. One thing that comes to mind for me is my time in high school, taking multiple choice tests. There is this device called a Scantron. Okay. So on a Scantron, you would fill out these lottery cards, choice questions, and you punch the holes in it. And then you put it into a device called a Scantron, and it would count the number of punched out holes or lead pencils. Then there was another computer associated with it that would count your percentage of correct and incorrect. Today, now that was a nicety back then for teachers, so they didn't have to sit at a desk and do it manually themselves. But it's a necessity today, especially in online institutions. Students now go to a computer or their cell phone and they take their exams, and then their data is shared instantly. So that's what I think about, the difference between a nicety and a necessity.
Thank you. You really took me back talking about Scantrons. I remember I actually, in college, was one of the ones that would actually scan the test to see what was correct and everything, helping out the instructor. So thanks for reminding me how old. So to expand on that, if we think about economics of datafication, can you provide an example in how you have seen datafication drive down costs to the point that it is now a necessity?
In relation to the question, when I exited the Army after 21 years of military service, I went into manufacturing. And I used to work on the operating floor, the assembly line, and we wanted to drive down the cost of waste. There were no tools on the operating floor, so the device I used was a clicker, and watching the product go through that was either poorly packaged or good packaged. And so with that clicker, I would take the number of clicks and count it and put it on and write the data down on a clipboard. At the end of the day, I would enter into a computer. And then I would say, if these packages were good packages, how much would we have saved if we can sell it on the market? So we used that cost data analysis to come up with a project to determine where waste was occurring and why it was occurring. As a result, we were able to solve the problem of good and bad packages, mainly hot dogs at the time, because you don't want to open a package going to a grocery store and that product is rotten. And so after we understood with that data, if I wasn't there standing at the end of the machine, counting good packages and bad packages, it could increase our operating sales from the company and make a profit. That's one of my examples.
The example that comes to mind for me is really around GPS. GPS used to be a nicety. It was only available to people who had really, really expensive cars, who had really, really expensive capabilities and availability. But now GPS is kind of a necessity. Yesterday I went to visit my friend in Marietta. I had no idea where his house was. I just put the address in my GPS and it took me right to his house. And so the cost of GPS has consistently gone down, and made it available to the masses. Now everyone has GPS either in their car or on their phone. And so it's gone from being a nicety, only available to a certain few, to a necessity for everyone to use to find their way around and where they need to go. And so I think this is just an example, one example of where data has moved from one of those things that was an exhaust part of the equation. We're not going to use that data because it's not easy to use or it's too expensive to provide. The form factor that we're going to provide it is too difficult. To an environment where data is now the most fungible and important asset that one can own and be responsible for caretaking. And so GPS, just like all the other examples that were mentioned today, is really driving the economics of data, right? We are seeing that more and more data is being gathered, and it means then that we have to be quite careful about where our data is, who's using it, and when we get to a point where we're going to use it for something good and it's driving the cost down, is that the right thing to do? So this idea of driving economics in data is having a material impact in all businesses. So it's really important to think clearly about how our data is actually being used.
Thank you. That's definitely a realistic example. I know I'm guilty of using my GPS, whether it's I know where I'm going just to see if I beat the time, or measuring or looking at, what traffic looks like on my way, whether it's home, to work, or wherever I may be going. So thanks for sharing that. Moving to round 2, where we'll talk about ideas are plentiful, execution of datafication is difficult. So Angie, as well as Gary, if you can tell us what is key to successful execution and how has datafication changed your approach? And please share an example of a success or failure.
Yes, thank you for that question, Keisha. So I know when we have data, it's very easy to just get excited, just start putting it into Power BI or using Python, but it's very important to make sure what is the question we're actually trying to answer, and how can I leverage these tools in order to get a very impactful solution or result to this. So an example I have is, so before I was working at AT&T, I was actually working at AT&T, I was working at the CDC as a data analyst in the polio department. And I was working with the lab team. So our lab team would go out there and they'd test wastewater to see if there are any polio there. So they have negative, they have test results that say this wastewater is negative for polio, or this is positive for polio strains. And my job was to collect that, take that data, and then see if I can find some insights and see some patterns and be like, okay, I'm seeing a high level polio into this community versus this other community. And before I did that, I had to sit down with the lab team and make sure I really understand this data. Like, okay, there are apparently 4 types of polio causes, which I didn't know that before. And there's also having to retest the data where they're not able to find a conclusive negative or positive. So with me being a data analyst, it's more just using these tools and these approaches. I really have to make sure I understand where this data is coming from, and also it's almost like a relay kind of race. So they pass the baton from the lab, and then I pass the baton over to the epidemiologist, and then they take it from there to make how can we make an impactful solution to this issue of polio we're having. So that's one way of how datafication can be executed.
Thank you, and I like that answer. I've been around a long time, long enough that back when I used to teach, I actually used Scantron, so yeah, I'm that old. And I've been a project manager, a product manager, a dev manager, a cellular engineer, an application engineer. When it comes to successful execution, datafication or not, I don't think that really matters. What I've found is that the key to successful execution is really around planning for success. It's really about understanding. It's really about understanding, risk, but not just negative risk, but positive risk. And if you plan for success and you keep your eye on the positivity, it helps put you in the right mindset to focus on the right things. So when the challenges do come, it helps you get around them. So that has always been the key for me is focusing on success. The second thing I would say about that is datafication. It follows the 3 economic principles of IT. One, that we can manage more people, less resources. We can manage more infrastructure and technology. And third, that we can lower our transaction costs. And one example that I would give is, for those of you who think back in your IT years, we used to use a methodology called waterfall. And it would take, we would spend a bunch of time collecting requirements, and then by the time we actually got the delivery, it would be 3 months later, and we'd finally be able to show something off, right? And a lot of that was because of the tools that we had at the time. And today, that's allowed us to transition to Agile. What I would say is that as datafication has progressed, and we think about the next generation platforms, now business and IT can deliver on the exact same platform, and that has taken the cycle time down from weeks to days. And if you're interested in hearing more about that, stop by the Cardinal booth.
So Gary's not told you already. He'll probably say it maybe 3-4 more times. Stop by the Cardinal Health booth this afternoon at the career fair. Round 3, bull versus bear, case for datafication. I'll address this question to Amy as well as Angie. What does utopian future look like for datafication in your industries?
And that's a really, really good question. So I work in the financial industry. So it's very heavily regulated. and there's a lot of things we have to consider. So in reality, the utopian version of this would definitely be where we can, number one, satisfy our customers. Right? We want our customers to be able to manage their credit, also protect their credit, and then of course do this in a safe manner. The second part of that utopia would be also to ensure that we are following all, of course, regulations that are out there, and ensuring that we are meeting all standards to be really good financial citizens for people's credit. And the third is, of course, security. We want to make sure we're doing this in a secure manner, while also ensuring that we are preventing threats from occurring as well. So that's what the utopia looks like. If we can get all three of those pillars, and that's what we strive to do, then that's really what we're shooting for in our utopia.
Thank you, Amy. For me, what utopian looks like when I was at the CDC is having good cross-training. Like I was explaining, we have like a chain almost. We start with a lab team collecting the lab data, and then we move on to my side, which is the data analyst analyzing the data, and then we finally end up with the epidemiologists who are able to create the impact and explain this well to the masses. So my utopian is really having good cross-training between the different teams, so everyone understands like this is what's needed in the data. This is how data is analyzed, so it's in a kind of a weird format. It makes things a little bit slower, more difficult. But then also cross-training on my side, which is I learned more about the data at hand. Like I learned more about, as I was saying, the different strains of polio, the different lab tests. So just, you could also say very good collaboration or communication is also what helps create a utopian for datafication. Because without that, that's a very huge roadblock, and it'll make something that's very simple trade-off can be very difficult without that.
Angie, you went right into my next question as what do you see as the greatest roadblock for datafication that will prevent your industry from reaching utopia? So I'll ask Amy if you want to chime in on that.
Sure, so for my industry, I would say our greatest roadblock is threat actors, right? So as we continue to see all this progression in technology as well as moving into datafication, threat actors, cybersecurity becomes even more paramount. So we're constantly on the defense as well as the offense. And so every time we think we have a great idea, we get customer feedback, where customers want something, and we're super excited to implement it, we have to step back and go, okay, but can we do this safely? Can we protect any data we get from that? How do we make this sure that's secure? And sometimes that slows us down, unfortunately, or sometimes it just doesn't happen. And so because of this constant balance of trying to meet those three pillars, but also the constant threat of those threat actors in cybersecurity, really that's our greatest roadblock.
I recall Dr. Greer saying yesterday how he helps to keep people out of jail when it comes to the security. Did you have any comments on that, Dr. Greer, on the greatest roadblock for datafication?
So I talked to a lot of CEOs and chief executives in industries around the world, and one common theme is that their greatest roadblock isn't really a technology at all. It's around workforce and talent. Being able to find the right people who are able to use these technologies in a way that benefits them, whether we're talking about cyber, whether we're talking about privacy, whether we're talking about data analytics and AI, or whether we're talking about some really great technologies associated with healthcare, like therapy or personalized medicine. Finding the right workforce is not easy. And so the greatest threat, I think, and the greatest roadblock for this future utopia, which is really described here well, is the ability to find people who really know how to make it real. And until we get more serious about getting more inclusive, more people engaged in this conversation and skilled, then we're going to constantly run into this workforce and talent roadblock.
Thank you. We'll move to the next round called Futurists. And I want each panelist to take a moment, think about this, and I do want to hear from each of you on it. But what technologies do you see as the most promising, and how is this enabled by data? Let's start from Gary and then work our way all the way down.
So from my perspective, when I think about it, it's not really about one specific technology, it's the convergence of technologies. So, when you add them up, right, AML, robotics, genomics, blockchain, energy storage, it's really the convergence of them that I think is going to lead the way. When I think about it, the electric car, I think, is a great example, right? It's a robot. It's a great example of energy storage. If you take in the AML perspective and you get into the robo-taxis, right? And then Elon Musk will probably let you pay for it with blockchain, so you can pull that in there too.
It's very hard to imagine any kind of data technologies that don't involve data centers. So if you want to see where the future is with data, look at the explosion of data centers. This is where we have huge buildings. I just went to tour the one at Georgia Tech yesterday, and the new building, the Coda building right there on Peachtree Street, and I don't know what the east or south, I can't remember. But the new data center has got significant amount of compute, storage, and memory. And the reason that the data center growth is a hockey stick is because we continually grow and build more and more data each day. And none of it is being deleted or removed. And so data center operations, the ability to store and compute against all of this data is one of those technologies that is extremely promising.
So it's interesting because one of the, I guess, most promising that I've seen out there, and it actually goes off what you said earlier, Dr. Greer, is data democratization. So this concept of having more people have access to the data and being able to use that data in a way that maybe is not necessarily in their wheelhouse or was originally in their wheelhouse in regards to education or work background. And so in that regard, we're seeing a lot of technologies like low-code and no-code solutions coming about, which is really driving that forward and hopefully helping to solve that workforce gap that, as I said, was mentioned before. And so as I look toward the future, I see more of those definitely proliferating and becoming more and more important as organizations see all this huge explosion of data that they just don't have possibly the talent to manage or even an idea of how to manage it.
Now with this question, I'm kind of going more back to the basics. I feel like one technology that may be very overlooked, but I think is very powerful still today is Excel, just Power BI. The reason I say that is that a lot of companies, they really do like Excel. It's very accessible. A lot of people do know how to use it. So I feel like if you're able to leverage it and just, there's a lot of nice nuggets and like gems you can do in Excel too. So if you're able to like learn that and just discover that, I feel like you're able to really you're able to extract very interesting trends and patterns in data. So definitely don't sleep on Excel.
Technology, what do I see as most promising? One of the things that comes to mind is how we see the internet. Most of the world's internet is conducted by undersea cable. It's very old, needs updating. Okay? So for one of the technologies that we're discussing today is called Open RAN, which is called Radio Access Networks. So I'll use an example. So you see these bottles of water here, right? Imagine those as cell phone towers. But each one of these cell phone towers are owned by different corporations. They don't talk to each other. They have their own plans. And as a result, information transfer doesn't happen as quickly. However, through open brand, which is the open communication, this is the concept. This technology allows, regardless of your mobile network provider, they all agree to a memorandum and also new trusted suppliers using different types of equipment that facilitate faster information transfer. So you'll hear talks about Open RAN and the necessity to build from 2G, 3G, 4G, and now today 5G. Okay? With 5G communication, it facilitates faster transformation of data, big data, financial data, supply chain data, academic data, research data. Open RAN facilitates the process of making sure that this information can be transferred globally without restriction between networks. It's all open and available. So Open RAN is a new technology that I see that is very promising, and it's something that if you're an investor, it's something to look into.
Thank you. Now, with AI being still a hot topic and resources often wondering, will AI take my job? And Dr. Greer, you touched on this yesterday, but what does datafication mean for the jobs of tomorrow?
So, datafication means an explosion of new jobs. It means we're going to have a whole new set of jobs that we don't have now. We're going to see new jobs in biomimicry engineering, new jobs in commercial space development. We'll see new jobs in cyber threat analysis. So the datafication and use of AI means that we're going to see an explosion of brand new jobs. At the same time, just like any other technology, some of the jobs will displace some of the current jobs. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be absolutely positive and enthusiastic about all the new jobs that are coming. What we need to be doing is preparing for those new jobs. And one of the things that we need to do to think about would be how do we change the curriculum in terms of what we teach at institutions of higher learning, or K through 12, so that the people who are coming out of these institutions can be prepared for these new, exciting jobs. So for me, datafication means the jobs of tomorrow are going to be really exciting, and I'm really optimistic about the kinds and number of new jobs that will be spawned just from datafication and AI.
Gary, I saw you reaching for the mic. Did you want to add any comments?
No, I like his answer. I like his data center answer. Can I switch that one too? I think the bad news is the World Economic Forum said that I think it was 2030, 30% of all jobs, or 30% of jobs will be taken up by AI. And every time the unemployment numbers come out, they've got a new category, which is AI, which is 4 jobs that are taken by AI. But I agree with Dr. Greer. What they don't talk about is all the new opportunity that's going to bring up, and all the industry that's going to happen because of it. It's woven into who we are, and it's what's happened time and time again. It's the same story with the Industrial Revolution. So, hands down, I agree with this guy.
Thank you. So we have one last round for questions, or to all panelists. So we are here to help. Why do you like the work you do, and why did you agree to participate in this panel? I'll start with Dr. Majid.
Okay, why do I like the work that I do? I enjoy being part of the process to create global relationships. In my role, I'm a IT acquisitions and cybersecurity manager. And what that means is I get to participate in helping the nation's embassies communicate with their host nations around the world. That can't happen without telecommunications contracts. That can't happen without understanding the necessity of what we need to do in order to communicate our United States interests. So I get to participate in that process. and really see the global impact of our actions. So, if you didn't know, last night there was a prison, international prison transfer. That could not have happened without IT acquisitions and cybersecurity contracts created at the senior level to transfer information about how we're going to make sure that people are returned to their home nations. So I'm proud to be able to say that I get to participate in that process. Even though, I can look at, so I get to look at the suppliers. I get to look at, the communications that the ambassador or even the president himself will want to say to another individual in that country. I get to participate in that process. So, and I agree to respond to her question, the other part of the question, why did I participate? I enjoy engaging with the public. I want people to know what we do and what we can do better. And sometimes the answer doesn't come from the agencies itself. It comes from people like you today. You are the reason why I'm in my job. You're the reason why I work hard to become better, so that I can provide a better response to you. So that when you're traveling overseas and you need help, I can make sure that the telecommunications package is on site, so that those other civil service agents can get out there and come assist you.
So to answer the second question, why did I agree to participate in this panel? Well, I was told there would be lunch, so a girl can always eat. But also with being a mentor of girls who code, I really do enjoy people learning about data and just coding in general. It really does warm my heart, and I'm excited that there's a coding competition here as well. So when I was told about this, I was like, this would be great. I think this would be nice being able to talk about data, especially working with the youth. So that's one reason why I came to this panel. And the other question, why do I enjoy the work that I do? The funny thing is, in college, I was actually a pre-med student, so I was working on becoming a doctor. But then I learned quickly that you cannot be squeamish and also be a doctor. So I had to find something else. And as part of the requirements for my pre-med degree, I had to take biostatistics. And my professor's like, Andrew, you're doing good at this. You should consider doing this as a, do the data science master's and the minor. And I was honestly not quite believing her. I was like, because when I was younger, I tried to take, AP statistics course, and they're like, I don't think this will really be for you. You should probably just get out, while you're ahead. So I dropped the course. So when in college, that teacher was like, you should really consider data science. And I was like, I'll give it a shot. And a couple of years later, I became a data analyst, and I love it. I love coding, and I really just like problem solving when there's bugs in my code, debugging. It's nice after you're debugging for 3 hours, and you're like, you realize it was a comma. That's why it doesn't work.
Every time.
And lastly, it's I really like that you can make an impact. You can make an impact in any industry too with data. It could be healthcare, it could be the government. It really just touches every industry. So I like that. You can really pick something that you're passionate about and then make a difference that way. So yeah, that's why I like what I do.
It's absolutely crazy how Angie and you, our backgrounds are so similar. So we'll replace pre-med with politics. We'd be in the same boat. So I thought I was going to do that for years. I got my undergraduate degree in basically diplomacy. I got my master's in science degree from Virtual Tech in diplomacy. I even interned at the Department of State. I was all in diplomacy. But then I came back and said, hey, I think I really like this whole math stuff and this data stuff. What's up with that? And I remember looking back and saying, when I was an undergrad, I took a lot of math classes. I took Calc 2, I took econometrics, and I actually enjoyed the application of math to real life situations and just digging into data and really solving puzzles. And so I made a decision to make that pivot. Now, mind you, that wasn't at the best time because I was graduating in the spring in my Master's of Science degree, so I basically had like a year to figure out how I was going to do that, but I did. And I haven't looked back since. It's been one great, enjoyable ride for me. And so I do what I do and I like what I do because I found puzzles I can consistently solve, or maybe that are unsolvable at the time or are a really great challenge. And I decided to be on this panel because I'm excited to talk to people and tell them about the world of data and guide them if that's where they want to go, if they have a maybe unconventional background, but also be that candid conversation, say, hey, maybe as you discuss and think about where you want to go, what you're deciding, think of data adjacent roles, maybe project management, maybe IT. You don't have to necessarily give data analysts, right, have that official title to work and be in that data space. So I'm always excited to coach and mentor others and talk to others about that because I want them to know that there's opportunity here that may not look exactly like what you see and what you've heard other people pursue, and I'm a testimony to that.
Being a chief data scientist at a Fortune 10 company means I get a chance to help other companies realize the power of the data that they have in those companies and help them use that data to grow their business exponentially. I get a chance to work with public sector organizations, healthcare, finance, education. And the best part of my job is being able to work with executives and senior technical leaders to solve really, really intractable business and technical problems so that their businesses can grow. Driving business growth is one of the most exciting things that a data scientist does. And so for me, it is unimaginable. I didn't have this kind of zigzag in my career. I knew I wanted to be a scientist from almost elementary school. And I spent my entire career being focused on science and technology and being focused on reaching the highest possible career role that I could reach in science and technology. And when you look at developing global AI strategies for nations, for businesses, and for individuals, that's a really, really cool job for me. The reason that I took this invitation to join this panel is because Cardinal Health is an amazing company. If you don't know about Cardinal Health, I would encourage you to dig deeper into what they actually do. They are one of Intel's best customers. And the reason that I took this invitation is because they are an example of how organizations are taking their data and actually turning it into fuel that drives their business. Now, most organizations, I'll tell you, are only using 15% of the data that they actually have in order to drive business growth. So that is an amazing and astonishingly small number. That means most of the data that companies have are not being used or able to be used because they need to be cleaned or tagged or classified or stored properly or indexed and made available. Cardinal Health is the exception to that. They are making a material impact on how data is actually being used and can be used to drive one of the most important things that I think we need to be focused on, which is our health. Now, my wife is a chef, and she spends an enormous amount of money on food. But she's convinced me not to ask any more about the budget of food because food is medicine. Food is medicine. And so when I look at this invitation, I thought, you know what? Okay, so this is a really great company. This is one of our customers. So I was excited right from the jump to be able to participate.
And if you'd like to learn more, stop by the car. Yes, of course I love that answer. I love being in healthcare. number of different industries, and I'll tell you why. Remember earlier I talked about, planning for success before failure, right? Even though I plan for success before failure, that doesn't mean I have bad days. And in fact, just recently I had a bad 2 years, y'all know what I'm talking about. So, in healthcare, and personally I've had, my own health issues. So every time you have a bad day, you know that the work that you're doing is helping to make healthcare more affordable and being able to scale it. And so that's important. And that's why I do it. As far as being on this panel, it really is why I come to events like this one, is that a lot of my focus at my job is really around career development. I'm a big believer that if you focus on folks' careers and help them move forward, it helps bring out the best in them each and every day. And so, career development is very important to me, and that's why I'm here.
Thank you all. So Amy and Angie, I too was a pre-med major, and my pivot point was dissecting a pig right before Thanksgiving. So that does conclude our questions for today. We invite you to ask our panelists any questions you may have. We will have roughly about 15 more minutes left. So you'll see 2 mic runners out there. Feel free to ask your questions.
Dr. Curry, I love the question. I love the points you were making around skill sets and preparing for the future and the step changes coming from a technology standpoint. Are there specific courses or specific training that you would recommend, to a person who is fairly young and really thinking about pursuing either data science or data engineering as a career? Are there specific coursework or training that you recommend?
So I would always recommend this course by this guy named Dr. Greer at Johns Hopkins. The practical applications of artificial intelligence. No, but more seriously, I think that it's important to have a basic understanding of data and data science. And so there's a number of free courses that are actually available on Coursera or other platforms like that around foundational elements of artificial intelligence and data science. This panel, these folks are esteemed. They're very, very, very good in their fields. And what you're hearing from them is that data is really, really important no matter what field you're in. Finance, education, telecommunications, or healthcare. So get a basic understanding of data. I think the next set of curriculum that I would recommend would be around this idea of how the influencer marketing and creator economy works. This economic engine that's focused on data science and AI is going to shift its position away from holders of very large companies that have very large data sets that control how data operates to people who are going to be able to influence other people on how that data is being used and can be used, and who are going to be able to create brand new things from it that have never been thought of before. So this idea, and by the way, the White House is having a summit later this month focused specifically on influencer marketing and creator economy, because they also recognize that this shift from huge companies that own and operate data and try and influence how things happen to people who are able to figure out how to influence masses with their insight and creativity and their innovation. This is definitely going to be something to be prepared for. So those are kind of the things that I would encourage people to think about.
Real quick, before you ask your question, I have three suggestions for everybody. want to get into datafication. And this is how it helped me. I'm a former military logistics officer. There's three things that I needed. I took economics courses. I needed to understand the economies of scale. I took supply chain logistics courses in community colleges and colleges, American ones. And lastly, I pursued certification as a Six Sigma Black Belt, all data entry. It helped me see, it helped me understand. It taught me about the inflows and outflows. It taught me about how to control misinformation. Because the key critical waste in datafication is time, to sift through it all, and eliminating misinformation so that you can tell the truth. That's how I succeed in the process.
I'd also like to add that another way to get into data is to really just get your hands dirty. Like if you have a passion or a project, and definitely just see if you can find data on that and then just practice analyzing that. Because you can watch videos online, but until you actually put it into practice, you're not gonna really understand data or like how to clean data, how to analyze it, or even how to present it to reports. So yeah, definitely don't forget about the on hands part 2 as well.
Thank you. Craig Platt, BDPA Cleveland. First of all, thanks for an excellent, provoking discussion. We talked a little bit about data security as being a potential threat to the benefits of datafication and/or AI. Can you talk a little bit, we just heard a little bit from Dr. Badger about the introduction of bias in algorithms and in data that will impact both the producer and consumer of these applications? And do you see solutions as retrieval, augmented generation, or other solutions that's helpful in that?
I'm sure that's a really good question. So bias. I love talking about bias because it's all around us, right? So when you think about bias and that being a security issue or a threat or a problem, you have to understand that bias starts at the beginning point, at data itself. As you gather data from different sources, you have to be cognizant that those sources could be biased, be it intentional or not. So that's the first thing. And then you're going to want to put into place ways to mitigate that bias, to understand that bias. There's amazing organizations who are doing that right now. For example, I'm going to throw out LLM group. They're not my favorite. I'm not sponsored, but I do want to say it. So Claude AI from Anthropic, they're actually have been able to dig into their neural network, find the neuron that may be more biased, and then work to put in a way to minimize that. Like that's the kind of really in-depth understanding of bias in data science that it's going to take to mitigate that kind of problem. But if you don't have that in-house, right, because that takes a lot of knowledge, right, some really high-level PhD folks that I am not, then what you want to do is put into place SMEs, all right? So that person, again, and this was talked about before about the future of jobs, there's going to be a person there, an SME, who's going to know that product, that end result, and say, hey, wait, something's not right here. You don't really represent what should be out there in reality. So that's going to be key, and it's not going to be just one person, it's going to be multiple people who are going to really have to look into that. So RAGs can help, but there's always going to be a human component and a human element. And that's really important for people to understand when they say, I think AI is going to take my job, right? We talked about this before, that's not true. Because there's always going to be a human component and a human element within AI that's going to be needed to mitigate bias, to ensure security, and also to ensure you're actually delivering what the customer wants. And so that would be, I guess, to answer your question, some of the ways I would look into it, right? If you don't have a PhD, then definitely have your SMEs, your human element there, and multiple people really in place to actually look at that result, look at it from every step of inception to possibly roll out, to when you're then creating your, not necessarily models, but your model library, to when you're retraining and doing all that process all over again. There needs to be a human component, an element, and subject matter experts throughout that to ensure you're mitigating bias throughout the entire process. process.
So I think bias is an interesting part of the discussion because it's a subset of a much larger conversation around ethics and transparency in the use of data science and AI. And when we look at the process associated with data science and AI, it starts off with this data scientist or data analyst deciding what is the data that's most relevant to solving the problem I'm trying to solve. Right, so let's just take an example. If I want to try and use AI to reduce crime in a neighborhood, I might pick all the crime data in a particular zip code, right? Now, no matter what this person does is trying to solve this problem, they're going to have to decide which data is relevant and which data is not relevant. That decision, in and of itself, creates bias right from the beginning. Because if I told you we're going to use the zip code 48204, does anybody know where that zip code is? That's in Detroit. If we take that zip code, we're going to get a very different view of what generates and drives crime statistics than if we take the zip code 90210, which is a very wealthy place in California. And so bias doesn't come from the data. This is one of the most irresponsible conversations to have. Bias comes from the people who are using the data. And so that's one of the reasons why this conversation about workforce and talent is so important. Because when you have a homogeny in the development of AI solutions, you get blind spots from those people who don't have any interaction with the data that they're using to try and solve the problem. So we need a more diverse talent set so that people who are actually participating in the development of these solutions can spot that right from the beginning. I love this idea of AI trying to find bias in other AI systems, and I'm a data scientist, so I love all these technical capabilities that we can describe that help identify whether bias operates or not. But if you really want to start solving the bias problem, get a more diverse talent field. People who are really able to see, hey, you know what? It makes absolutely no sense for you to get crime data from a place where only the crime that's committed is by one particular type of person or one particular people or background or culture. You need to look across and think more specifically on how that happens. Now, we could use lots of examples in other places too, like healthcare. Bias doesn't come from healthcare data. Bias comes from people who are using healthcare data to make a point. And this concept of misinformation and disinformation, this is really part of that as well. How do we also deal with bias? We are transparent about how it's being used. When you go to get a loan at a bank, the bank does not show you the algorithm, the weights, the parameters, and how those weights are used to deny or approve loans. You have no vision into that. When you try to get into a school, you don't get a chance to interrogate the algorithm that's making a decision about whether or not you have the right skills, grade point average, and experience to get into that school. So one other very important thing we can do to deal with bias is be open and honest and transparent. Listen, we're not giving you the money for this loan, and here's how we made the decision. And then you can decide, okay, that makes sense, or I don't like it. But the point is, if we don't tell anyone how these decisions get made, and there's no visibility, and the only people making them are from one specific type of person, then we have a ethical, transparent, and therefore a bias problem.
Hello. I can just yell.
Okay, yeah.
Hey, my name is Justin. I don't know how you guys are doing. So pretty much, I kind of want to talk to anybody on the panel that I feel like I recognize within that aspect. So where my background is in aerospace engineering. I'm trying to get my master's in software engineering. So I'm trying to make that transition to data science into like the software realm. But as of right, so my question is, how was that experience for you guys, for those people that didn't come naturally from a software background? Because as of right now, I've been experiencing a lot of no's. As I'm trying to get my foot in the door, I've been using DataCamp to, do my own at-home stuff and programming, which is a very good resource as well, like Coursera, as well as, like I already mentioned, going back to get my master's in software engineering to diversify my education so that I can more fit the mode. So again, thesis statement, my question is, what was your experience like as you were trying to transition from nursing or from politics or from whatever, as well as I'm already in my early career, and so I'm already doing my job. So my background is in aerospace engineering. I'm a systems engineer, senior right now, working on the F-22 program at Lockheed Martin Aeronautics. And so I'm trying to transition, like I said, towards that data analytics, that AI, that ML kind of position within Lockheed, because there's an opportunity for that because they're trying to grow. And so again, bottom line, the question is, what was your experience like? What was it like in the nose, and how were you able to overcome and finally get an opportunity to show your stuff? Thank you.
I can tell you that my main motivation, my favorite word is no. My favorite word is no because it motivates me to continue to grow. I always look for different avenues of approach. I'm a military trained person. I joined the military at age 17. Okay, so dealing with I don't believe in no-win scenarios at all. I have to charge forward. So how does my experience possibly help you? Continue to be innovative. Do not be afraid to take risks. From what you just told me the past 30 to 45 seconds, you are clearly a very talented person. Consider being a consultant. Consider starting your own firm. Okay? In the United States government, we can't survive without people like you. So what do? We put out bids for services. We want to know how you can help us. One of the ways that we communicate about what our needs are is through a website called gsa.gov. gsa.gov publishes opportunities. It seeks opportunities, it seeks great minds like you to contract with you so that you can provide the services that your government needs. That's one way. The other way to make your experience, and what made my experience very diverse. I joined the armed forces. It didn't matter if I was on active duty or a reservist or a National Guard. Serving the public gave me the opportunity to see the world from 1,000 feet up, from multi-thousands of feet up. I think we talked the other day. You're a pilot.
Yes, sir.
You know what the world looks like looking down. You can see the opportunities. You know what the landscape looks like. And so you can prepare your mind and your activities for the avenues of growth so that you can figure out where you want to land. So that's from a student pilot to an expert pilot. This is how I see you. So I think, based on my experiences, this is my suggestion to you. Don't believe in no-win scenarios.
We're close to time. We have time for one more question, and those that may not get your questions answered, in the words of Gary, feel free to stop by the Cardinal Health booth. We'll connect you with the panelists or answer your questions. Go ahead, Natalie.
Good morning. My name is Johnny Snee, ex-IBMer and ex-AWS. There's a lot of talk going around data, around digital disruptors. So, be it disruptors or being disrupted. And I'm going to take this question to Cardinal Health, because in the healthcare industry now, the developers and some of us that are building net new applications, we're looking for APIs and SDKs and utilizing your data in the public space so we can build net new stuff. One early mover into this was Cigna, right? Exposing their data via APIs and SDKs. I want to know, what is Cardinal Health doing? And sort of what your thought, and then for the other panelists, how are you guys looking at exposing your data? We're having workshops today, and build-a-tons and we're coding, how are you guys exposing your data so that new developers can utilize that to build new cool digital applications?
People wouldn't even let us.
You want the cybersecurity person to stand up and answer that question?
And security. Security. Ty. Security controls.
You want security controls and cyber to answer that?
So, to the best of my knowledge, we're not exposing our data. We're doing the exact opposite. For the most part,